A 30-year-old mechanic girl from a quiet Montana town just fixed a blown truck tire for free. No questions asked. She didn't know the driver, didn't ask for thanks, and certainly didn't expect what happened next. But when the stranger returned with a gift that would change her life and her garage forever, the mechanic girl who once worked in silence became the heart of a growing movement. This emotional story of how a mechanic girl's small act of kindness sparked a powerful chain reaction will stay with you long after the final frame. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. Most people wouldn't give a second glance to a place like Bella Stevenson's roadside tire shop. Tucked away along a dusty stretch of highway just outside of Billings, Montana, it looked more like a forgotten relic than a functioning business. A crooked sign that once proudly read, "Stevenson Tire and Repair," swayed in the wind, barely clinging to its post. The gravel lot was cracked and scattered with old tools, worn tires, and years of stories hidden beneath layers of dust. But to Bella, this wasn't just a shop, it was her sanctuary. At 30, she had the kind of quiet resilience that didn't need words. You saw it in the way she wiped her hands on her coveralls, in the way her fingers calloused and strong knew exactly where to place every bolt and wrench. Her hair, peppered with silver strands, was always pulled back in a messy bun. And her eyes, they carried the weight of love lost, of years spent holding something together when everything around her threatened to fall apart. Most folks drove past without stopping, but not today. Today, a beat-up old truck limped into her lot, a back tire nearly shredded, and behind the wheel sat a man whose silence spoke louder than any cry for help. The truck rolled in like it had been dragged through a war zone. Its back tire, what was left of it, flapped sadly with every turn of the rim, the rubber shredded like it had been chewed by a bear. The vehicle finally groaned to a halt just off the gravel lot, engine sputtering one last breath before dying into silence. Bella Stevenson set her socket wrench down gently, wiped her hands on a rag that had seen too many years, and stepped outside, blinking against the harsh Montana sun. From the driver's side, a man climbed out tall, broad-shouldered, and probably in his late 50s. His face was a road map of time, lined deep with creases and sunburn. But what struck Bella wasn't his appearance. It was the way he moved. Every step was careful, deliberate, like each joint remembered a pain the man didn't talk about. His right leg dragged just enough to show it had once taken a hit it never fully recovered from. "Afternoon," he said, voice gravelly like sandpaper on an old workbench. "Name's Jack." Bella gave a quiet nod. "Tires blown." "Yeah." She gave up about 5 miles back. "I figured I'd roll her here if she didn't fall apart first." Bella knelt to take a closer look, fingers tracing the tattered edges of the tire. "Lucky you made it," she muttered. "Any further and you'd be walking." Jack let out a soft, half laugh. "I've done enough of that in my life." They didn't speak for a moment, just stood there, two strangers baking under the sun, listening to the whisper of wind through dry grass and the ticking of a cooling engine. Then Bella said, "I've got a used Goodyear in back. Not pretty, but it'll get you home." Jack reached for his wallet, almost instinctively. She shook her head. "Don't worry about it." He paused. "No charge." "Not today." Jack looked at her for a long moment. "You don't even know me." Bella stood up, brushing dirt off her knees. "Don't need to." There was no heroism in her tone, no grand gesture, just quiet, matter-of-fact kindness, like offering someone a drink of water without needing to know their name first. As she got to work, Jack moved to help, limping around to the rear of the truck. He held the jack steady while Bella slipped the tire iron into place. They worked in rhythm, as if they'd done this dance before, her hands fast and sure, his steady despite the tremble that came when he gripped the tools too tightly. "You own this place?" he asked after a while. "Been mine since I was 23, she said, tightening a lug nut. "Dad left it to me. It's not much, but it runs." Jack glanced around. "Runs better than I do." Bella chuckled. "You served?" He nodded slowly. "Army. Desert Storm. Took some shrapnel in 91. Been limping ever since." She didn't pry, just nodded. "My mom was a combat medic. Iraq. Lost her in 07. The uniform never came back. Just a folded flag." Jack's eyes softened, and for a moment, the wind seemed to hush. "Sorry to hear that," he said. Bella didn't respond. She just reached for the air hose and started inflating the spare. They finished the job in silence. When it was done, Bella stood back and wiped her brow. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the lot. Jack looked at the tire, then at her. "You sure you won't take anything?" She folded her arms. "You've already paid more than enough." He stared at her for a beat. Something flickering behind his eyes. Grief. Maybe gratitude. Something heavier than a wallet could carry. Then he gave her a small nod. A soldier's nod. Silent. Final. He climbed back into the truck, the engine coughing once, then roaring to life. Bella stepped back, watching as he pulled onto the road and disappeared down the long, empty stretch of highway. She didn't know where he was headed. Didn't ask. But something in her chest ached not from regret, but from recognition. That weight, that sense of shared loss. She'd seen it in the mirror more times than she could count. That evening, long after the tools were put away, Bella sat on the back steps of her shop with a lukewarm cup of coffee in hand. The sky above her was painted in dusty orange and bruised purple. She watched the stars blink to life one by one and wondered if Jack saw them too wherever he was. She didn't need thanks, didn't want a reward, but something told her this story wasn't finished yet. Bella didn't think much about the man with the limp and the blown tire. She didn't expect to. Folks came and went all the time, most were grateful. A few forgot to say thanks, and some, like Jack, just left a quiet space behind when they drove away. But on the third morning, before the sun had a chance to rise above the Montana hills, Bella was jolted awake by the sound of her shop's buzzer blaring. She stumbled out of bed, still groggy, throwing on a hoodie as she made her way through the back room of the shop to the front bay door. It was barely 5:30. Her first thought was, maybe it's a delivery truck that got lost. But what she saw when she lifted the garage door made her heart stop. Sitting in the middle of her lot was a vintage 1966 Ford Mustang Cherry Red, polished to perfection and gleaming under the soft amber hue of the shop's security lights. The kind of car people dreamed of owning, let alone touching. Next to it, resting gently on the hood, was a wooden crate. On top of the crate, a note. No truck in sight, no footsteps, no sign of anyone. Bella stepped closer, cautious, her boots crunching over gravel. The crate had her name carved into it. Not written, carved. She picked up the envelope first. It wasn't sealed, just folded, with a single word on the front in neat block letters. "Bella?" She opened it with trembling fingers. "You probably thought I'd forget. Most people do. But 3 days ago, you didn't ask who I was. You didn't want my story. You just helped. You didn't know it. But that tire, that was the last thing holding me together. I'd been driving for days, trying to outrun something I couldn't shake. That morning, I planned to leave everything behind. You stopped that. You reminded me that there's still good in the world, and when a man's reminded of that, he either keeps running or turns around. Jay. Bella stood frozen. Her fingers grazed the edge of the wooden crate. The smell of fresh sawdust still lingered. She popped the lid, and what she saw inside made her mouth go dry. A complete set of snap-on tools, every socket, every wrench, every precision-calibrated piece laid into foam as neatly as surgical instruments. Not used, brand new. But that wasn't the strangest part. At the very bottom, in a velvet box, lay a set of military dog tags. One was Jack's. The other, Daniel Jameson, Jr., U.S. Navy KIA, 2009. Next to it, another folded note. This one in different handwriting. Tighter? Shakier? My son rebuilt that Mustang with his own hands before he deployed. It was supposed to be our father-son project. He didn't come home. I kept the car in storage. Couldn't bring myself to sell it until I met you. Bella had to sit down. The cold of the gravel bit through her jeans, but she didn't care. Her eyes stung with tears that refused to fall yet. She stared at the Mustang, the way its curves caught the light, the way it somehow felt. Alive. Not just a machine anymore, a memory, a legacy. This wasn't a gift. It was a burden Jack could no longer carry, and he'd chosen her to hold it. Bella didn't know what made her cry first, the Mustang, the tools, or the realization that a simple act of kindness had pulled someone back from the edge of giving up entirely. She sat in the silence of the Montana dawn until the sky turned blue and the wind picked up. Then she stood, walked over to the crate, and whispered into the morning air, "Don't worry, Jack. I won't let it sit idle." Later that day, she pushed the Mustang into the bay, hands steady, heart full. She didn't touch a wrench. Not yet. Instead, she placed the dog tags gently on her father's old tool chest, right beside the folded flag that had come back when her mom didn't. She didn't know where Jack had gone. She might never know. But deep down, she hoped he was somewhere with a little less weight on his shoulders. And if fate ever brought him back her way, he'd find his son's car running. Better than ever. For the first time in years, Bella started unlocking the shop door with something more than just routine in her chest. It was purpose. It was weight. Not the kind that drags you down, the kind that keeps you grounded. The Mustang sat inside Bay 2, polished like glass and untouched since she pushed it in that morning. Every time Bella looked at it, she felt like she was staring at something sacred. She hadn't even turned the key. Something about it made her feel like she needed to earn that moment first. So, instead, she spent her days doing what she always did, changing tires, rotating brakes, patching radiators, replacing gaskets. The hum of old engines was her music, and the scent of motor oil felt like home. But word was spreading. It started with the local mailman, then the tow guy, then a trucker who'd driven all the way from Missoula just to see that red Mustang with the story. Bella didn't tell them much, just nodded, offered coffee, let the car speak for itself. But something had shifted. Folks weren't coming just for repairs anymore. They came because they felt something. One Wednesday afternoon, while Bella was rotating a set of tires on a rusty Dodge, she heard the shop door creak open. She looked up, expecting a customer. Instead, it was a kid. Maybe 20, maybe younger. Nervous, skinny, clutching something in both hands like it might break. Bella wiped her hands on her jeans and walked over slowly. "You lost." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I was told I could find you here." She raised an eyebrow. "Who told you that?" He held out a folded note. "There was a flyer at the VA in Butte. Said you might be hiring." Bella blinked. She hadn't printed a flyer. She opened the note. The handwriting was familiar. Block letters, steady. If you're reading this, it means someone else needed the same thing I did. Give them what you gave me. A reason to keep going. J. Bella looked up from the paper, heart in her throat. What's your name? Caleb, he said, voice cracking. I just got out. Army. Been looking for work. Anywhere. Really. I don't got much. But I can learn. She didn't hesitate. Grab that jack stand and come with me. That day, Bella taught Caleb how to bleed brake lines and realign a front end. He fumbled, apologized, got grease on everything. But he stayed. By the end of the week, he was opening the shop for her before she even pulled in. By the end of the month, 2 more young vets had shown up, one with burn scars down his arm, the other who didn't say more than a handful of words, but who could disassemble a carburetor blindfolded. Bella never asked about their stories, never needed to. Instead, she gave them work, purpose, a place to breathe without judgment. She started calling them the crew. And every Friday, they'd stand around that Mustang, coffee cups in hand, tools scattered everywhere, just talking. Not about war. Not about pain. Just about life. Caleb would sometimes run his hand along the hood and whisper, I wish my dad could see this. Bella never answered, just nodded. She understood. One night, long after everyone had gone home, she sat on the floor beside the Mustang, back resting against the tire, a wrench dangling loosely in her fingers. The shop was quiet. The kind of quiet that made you think about everything and nothing at once. She looked up at the ceiling, then down at the dog tags still resting on her father's tool chest. Jack? Daniel? Her mom? People she never really knew, but somehow felt more deeply than those she saw every day. I get it now, she whispered. This isn't just about fixing what's broken. It was about holding space. For grief, for healing, for second chances. That night, before locking up, she walked over to the Mustang, put her hand on the key, turned it. The engine roared to life, smooth, confident, proud. And Bella? She cried. But for once, they were the good kind of tears. By the time fall rolled around, Bella's shop didn't feel like just her place anymore. The garage once filled only with the soft rattle of tools, and her quiet humming now echoed with laughter, clanking steel, and voices that had finally found the courage to speak again. It wasn't loud, not chaotic, just alive. Caleb was there every morning before sunrise, prepping the bays and making the coffee a little too strong. Evan, the quiet one with the scarred hands, had taken over the tool wall, reorganizing it like a surgeon arranging scalpels. And Zoe, the latest addition, was teaching herself welding in the back corner, sparks flying like fireflies around her steel-toed boots. Bella didn't hire them. They just showed up, and she didn't send them away. It wasn't a business anymore. It was something else. One Tuesday afternoon, just as Bella finished patching up a cracked radiator, her phone rang. The caller ID read, unknown. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something instinct maybe told her to answer. Bella Stevenson. The voice on the other end was sharp but warm. A woman. Professional. This is Lindsay Monroe, Regional Director for the Valor Foundation. We support veteran employment programs across the Midwest. Bella wiped her hands on a rag, still half listening. I think you've got the wrong number. I run a tire shop, not a program. Lindsay chuckled. That's exactly why I'm calling. We've been hearing about your shop for weeks now. Something about a red Mustang, a few rescued veterans, and a woman with magic hands and no employee handbook. Bella froze. Lindsay continued. One of your crew, Caleb, I believe wrote us, said we needed to see what was happening out there in Billings. Bella felt the back of her neck flush. He didn't ask. He didn't have to. Lindsay said, We're sending a representative next week. We'd like to talk to you about funding an apprenticeship program. Equipment, certification, full support, if you're open to it." Bella leaned against the wall, heart pounding. "You want to make this official?" "You've already done the hard part," Lindsay said gently. "You gave them a reason to come back. We just want to help you keep the doors open." For a long beat, Bella didn't answer. She looked around the shop. Caleb and Zoe were laughing over a stripped bolt. Evan was tuning an alternator like it was a guitar. The Mustang still sat in Bay 2, its hood up now, engine gleaming like a beating heart. Official. She hadn't thought about that. She hadn't planned for this. But maybe, just maybe, this was exactly what was meant to happen. "I'm in," she finally said. By the time the rep from Valor arrived, the entire town seemed to already know. Mrs. Whitaker from the bakery brought over 24 donuts. Frank from the parts store offered discounted supplies. Even the mayor stopped by with a camera crew awkwardly standing next to Bella in oil-stained jeans while someone asked her to smile. Bella wasn't used to the attention. She preferred the solitude of a carburetor. But when she stepped back and saw Zoe teaching a new recruit how to weld, or Caleb giving a half-hour lesson on brake pads to a high school senior who'd just dropped out, she realized something had shifted. She was no longer just a mechanic. She was running a place where people started over. The Valor rep, a woman named Teresa, walked the shop with a clipboard and wide eyes. "This place is incredible," she said, watching as Evan carefully reassembled a transmission. "You've created something that most grant-funded programs can only hope to build." Bella shrugged. "I just didn't want them fixing things alone." Teresa smiled. "That's exactly the kind of leadership we need." By the end of the week, Bella had signed a partnership agreement with Valor. The shop would officially become a certified training site for veterans and underserved youth. They'd receive funding, training materials, and national exposure. But none of that excited Bella as much as what came in the mail the next morning. An envelope, no return address, just a single word handwritten on the back, still running. Inside was a photo. The red Mustang, parked in front of a weathered farmhouse. Next to it stood Jack, one hand on the hood, the other holding up a simple sign. "Thank you for saving more than my tire." Bella held the photo to her chest, eyes full, smile soft. She looked around her shop. No, this wasn't just about tires anymore. It was about giving people a second engine, a second run, a reason to keep going. If someone had told Bella Stevenson a year ago that her dusty roadside garage would become a certified training hub and community anchor, she would have laughed and probably gone right back to fixing brakes. But now she was spending half her days mentoring veterans, teenagers, and even a few single moms who just wanted to learn how to change their own oil. The other half, she still got under the hood. She needed that. It was her grounding force. But the garage had changed, and so had she. The old Bella believed her job was about survival. The new Bella was learning it was about service. One October morning, the Montana air crisp and smelling faintly of pine and rubber. Bella stood by the open bay door sipping her third cup of coffee. Caleb was inside, leading a small group of new apprentices through the basics of engine diagnostics. Zoe had taken on scheduling. Evan had started logging repairs into a computer system so we don't have to keep fixing the same cars 3 times, he said dryly. Bella didn't ask them to do any of that. They just started stepping up. That's when she realized she wasn't holding this place together anymore. They all were. Later that day, a girl maybe 19 walked into the shop clutching a backpack like it was a lifeline. Her name was Riley. She had no certifications, no experience, just a pair of worn sneakers, shaky hands, and a stare that didn't quite meet your eyes. Bella didn't ask where she came from. Just handed her a rag and pointed to a dusty bench. "Wipe it down," she said. "If you're gonna be here, we keep things clean." Riley did, without a word. 2 hours later, she was still there, quietly watching the others, eyes locked on every move. At the end of the day, she asked Bella if she could come back tomorrow. Bella nodded. Same time. That was it. No forms, no interview, no promises. But Riley came back, and by the end of the week, she was helping Zoe rotate tires. By the end of the month, she had a notebook filled with sketches of engines and handwritten instructions from Evan. Bella caught her once, standing in front of the Mustang, just staring. "You like cars?" Bella asked gently. Riley nodded. "My brother used to have one. Said they were easier to fix than people." Bella smiled softly. He wasn't wrong. That night, Bella stayed late. The garage was quiet again, humming with that sacred silence she used to find comfort in. Now, it felt different, like the echo of a growing family. She sat beside the Mustang, still gleaming, still honored. The photo Jack had sent hung on the bulletin board above her father's workbench now, right next to a new one. Her crew, laughing around a table of spare parts, half of them covered in grease, all of them smiling. She pulled out a small wooden box she hadn't opened in years. Inside was her mother's patch, Army medic, worn at the edges but still proud, and a letter her mom had written before deploying. She unfolded it with trembling hands. "Fix what you can, kid. And when you can't, be the kind of person who helps others do it." Bella closed her eyes and let the words settle into her bones. She had spent so many years trying to live up to a legacy she barely understood. But maybe she was finally doing it. Not by building an empire, but by building people. The next morning, Bella arrived early to find Riley already sweeping the lot. Evan was brewing coffee. Caleb was tinkering with a beat-up transmission someone had dropped off with a sticky note that read, "If you can fix it, it's yours." Bella smiled. "You guys act like this place runs itself." Caleb grinned. "It kind of does now. You just keep us grounded." Zoe chimed in from behind the desk. "You're the heart of this place. Bella." Bella felt something stir deep inside her pride. Sure. But more than that. Peace. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't carrying it all alone. And maybe that was the greatest growth of all. Letting go. Letting others in, and watching something broken come back stronger. By the time the first snowfall brushed across the hills of Billings, Bella Stevenson's little garage had become more than just a place to fix engines. It had become a place to rebuild lives. Truckers passing through now made detours just to stop by Bella's garage, sometimes for tire rotations, more often just for coffee and conversation. Locals began referring to it as the shop that listens. Veterans who had once lost hope were now teaching high school dropouts how to torque bolts and swap brake pads. And every single day, Bella still showed up before the sun, still put on the same oil-stained hoodie, still rolled up her sleeves and got to work. But she wasn't working alone anymore. That reality sank in deeply one crisp Friday evening as Bella stood outside the garage, her breath fogging the air. Inside, the crew was hosting a small get-together, nothing fancy. Just coffee, cornbread, and laughter echoing against the steel walls. Zoe had brought in a radio. Old country music played softly, mixing with the clang of wrenches and the scrape of folding chairs on the floor. Bella leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes scanning the people inside. Caleb, mid-joke, had the others howling with laughter. Riley was carefully painting names on each of the tool chests, a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Evan, ever the quiet one, was sitting in the Mustang hands on the steering wheel, eyes closed. For a second, Bella imagined Jack was sitting in the passenger seat, silent, proud, watching it all unfold. She stepped inside just as Riley looked up from her brush. "I saved this one for you," she said, dipping the brush again and pointing to the biggest toolbox against the far wall. Bella approached slowly. Written in clean, careful strokes across the red metal chest were the words, "Foundations and Futures." Riley glanced up, cheeks flushed. "Because that's what you gave us. A place to stand. And a reason to keep going." Bella couldn't speak for a moment, her throat clenched, tears pricking her eyes before she could stop them. She knelt down and touched the freshly painted letters with the back of her fingers. "It's perfect," she whispered. The room had quieted. Everyone was watching. No grand speech was expected, but Bella felt like she needed to say something. So she stood, took a breath, and said simply, "I thought this shop was all I had left. My last grip on what my parents built, what I thought I had to protect alone. But I was wrong." She looked around the room at their faces, at their stories. "This place isn't about me anymore. It's about you, all of you. Every hand that picked up a wrench, every tear that fell without needing to be explained, every story that made its way into these walls." Bella smiled. "You made this a home, not just for yourselves, for anyone who ever needed one." Caleb raised his coffee cup. "To Bella's garage," he said, "where people come in broken and leave running smoother than ever." They all raised their cups, grinning, clinking mugs and paper cups and even a socket wrench Evan held up like a champagne flute. Later that night, long after the lights dimmed and the crew had gone home, Bella sat on the steps out front, wrapped in her dad's old flannel jacket, a cup of lukewarm coffee in her hand, and a kind of quiet in her chest that felt nothing like loneliness. The Mustang still sat in Bay 2, the only car she refused to charge a single dime for. It had become something of a symbol now of second chances, of silent gratitude, of legacies carried forward without fanfare. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Jack's final letter. The corners were frayed from how often she'd read it. "Thank you, Bella. Not just for fixing my tire, but for reminding me that kindness still exists even when it's buried under years of silence." Bella smiled and tucked the letter back into her coat. And as the wind picked up and the stars blinked to life over the Montana plains, she whispered into the night, "You're welcome, Jack, and thank you for giving me a reason to open the door. Anyone can rebuild if they're given a second chance, and the space to try again." As the Montana sky faded into twilight, Bella Stevenson didn't close her shop doors. She opened another page in her father's old notebook. Not to record a repair job, but to draft a plan, a path for every vet, every lost soul, every kid who was told they'd never be enough. Because now she understood the garage she once guarded like a relic wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every broken-down dream that just needed a little help turning over. The young woman who once fixed engines in silence had become the mechanic who mended people, too. And for Bella, and those who came through her open bay doors, the road wasn't just a way out. It was a way home. The end. Up next, 2 more powerful stories waiting for you. Click to keep going, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe second chances deserve a first look.